What wedding moment made you think, they are not going to last long? I was the best man at a wedding a few years back. At the rehearsal dinner, his future in-laws were treating him like crap. They were bossing him around, making him do crap, and talking down to him. They didn't let him hang out with his groomsmen afterwards while the bride went out and got drunk. They are now divorced. Added to add a little detail. Yes, he should have stood up for himself. His ex's parents were making him do crap for the wedding the next day and he was too nice to say no. For you youngsters out there, this is cliché, but you really do marry the family and the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, a lot of the times. When the maid of honor professed her love for my brother during her toast at my brother's wedding, and her husband walked up to the head table, picked her up, and carried her away before she could embarrass him further. They lasted about 3 months after that. My brother and his wife on the other hand are still happily married 20 years later. The groom took the stupid cake thing to an extreme. The bride had given him his bite, and mushed a little on his chin or nose. He then took a piece and mashed it into her face so hard that I was expecting her to end up with a bloody nose. Cake and frosting got up her nose, in her eyes, down the front of her dress, etc. The bride had to go get cleaned up, had her makeup redone, and was ugly crying within an hour of saying, "I do." He didn't give a fuck. The woman who made my wedding cake is a friend of the family, and when she was doing the consult with us, she told us that one condition that she had was that we had to have a conversation about serving each other cake. We could do whatever we wanted, we could not do it, we could serve each other nicely, we could dab it on our noses, we could do a face plant in the cake. It was our cake. But we had to agree on it together beforehand. We just cut the cake together but didn't serve it to each other. Apparently, she had seen more than one marriage that got off to a rocky start because the couple was not on the same page about cake, and it was very important to her that her cake would not be a source of conflict in our marriage. I was at the wedding of one of my mom's oldest friends and she clearly had more fun dancing with the best man after the wedding. Long story short, they dated for a while after the divorce. Your potential replacement is always closer than you think. His third wedding. Same venue and same after ceremony driving away vehicle as the first two. The groom and best man had a dancing routine for getting into the church ceremony and they got nearly halfway through it and I guess the groom felt they hadn't received much applause and wows from us, the attendees, and decided to go back to the entrance and start all over. Sigh. When the groom started off his speech by saying, "We all know I didn't want to get married but we're here for bride and child we had together. 1 year, 3 months later they were finished." Had an old boss who was divorced. He told me once I should have known it wasn't going to last when the only happy moment I had on my wedding day was when I snuck out to smoke weed with my buddies in the parking lot. The bride told her bridesmaids that she didn't actually want to get married. Multiple times. No one told the groom until after the divorce. The groom had a best woman instead of a best man. Nothing wrong with that. But her toast left the whole room in awkward silence because she was clearly in love with him. One of the groomsmen and his wife, a groomsmaid, got into a heated argument after the rehearsal. He left. Said his unit got called up, he's military. We accepted that and went on with the wedding. Several weeks later, 2 of my bridesmaids, who were in the hotel room next to the couple, told me the argument was about how my husband should be marrying her, the groomsmaid, because groomsman wasn't supposed to come back from Iraq. We don't talk to them anymore and they are still married. Added they had the fight in their hotel room. 2 friends of mine got married, and when they gave their vows, the guy started laughing at the part about being faithful. Oops. I once watched a live stream of the wrong Vegas wedding. The link I was given for a friend's wedding was incorrect, and during the exchange of vows, the groom got to the part about being faithful, and the bride visibly and audibly chuckled. It was hilarious to watch, but I bet they didn't last long. I was kindly included in a last-minute +1 to the wedding of a family friend who I'd never met before. At the rehearsal dinner, or the German equivalent, the Polterabend, the guests smashed ceramic and porcelain items on the ground. I was fresh in Germany, so this was all pretty out of context and frightening. But my boyfriend explained that it's a tradition, reminding the couple that life is sometimes difficult and you have to work together to clean it up. The bride kind of half-heartedly motioned to the groom to sweep it up. He did a little bit, then just moved on to talk to his friends, leaving most of the shards strewn around the yard. Additionally, I don't think I saw the couple talk to each other once over the next 3 days of celebrations. It was a gorgeous wedding, and I'm so grateful that I was invited. Really good way to begin living in a new country, but it wasn't surprising to hear that they'd divorced a few years later. Wedding photographer here, I can think of a few. Full-blown row during dinner, had another couple fistfight during a first dance. An infamous one for me was leaving a venue late one night and as I'm walking to the train I can see the bride down an alley, on her knees with the best man. I was the wedding photographer for a reality TV show. End of the night, I'm having a few drinks with the film crew and the groom has come up to me and one of the producers and says, "I think I've made a big mistake, so we're trying to be reassuring and telling him it's natural to second-guess such a bit decision, to which he replies, "No, I mean I think I'm gay." I had them both on Facebook. The drama the next week was mesmerizing to watch unfold. I've got a ton of these stories. Edit, since you asked. Was working with a video guy who had the bride and groom on radio mics. Sat around waiting for the evening action to kick off, and the video dude called me over and said, "Listen to this." Groom was talking to one of the bridesmaids about how they had to end their affair. Now he's married. Not a how could you tell they wouldn't last, but shooting in an old church on the hottest day of the year. Watching the groom wait for the bride and he's swaying back and forth. Next thing he's fainted, fallen forward, and slammed his mouth into a stone step. Smashed his front teeth out, blood everywhere. Had a bride and groom on a trampoline for photos, groom's heading downward, bride's about to go up, he lands on her dress just as she goes up and she pops out the top of the dress. Boobs flailing around in the air. Shot a traveler wedding which erupted into a massive brawl. Watched a drunk usher knock over a wedding cake. Weddings are amazing. I've been doing this for about 12 years and seen some sights, but I still love shooting them even now. I was at a wedding when a phone went off during the ceremony. In the middle of exchanging vows. It was the groom's. He took the call. They are divorced now. Edit to add, I believe it was a cousin calling, to ask if they were late for the wedding. When he smashed the cake in her face and hair, then went off drinking with his buddies. In 12 weeks, she filed. Good thing I didn't buy an expensive gift. He complained she was mean to him throughout their dating life. The day before the wedding, all of the groomsmen and the groom's friends told him not to marry the girl. Like straight up. They lasted less than a year. The part of the vows where you pledge monogamy? The audience laughed. They got secretly married at the local town hall out of spite to the girl's father, who did not agree with the relationship. This happened right out of high school and they divorced during my sophomore year at college. The most beautiful wedding I've been to ended in divorce. Venue was where the groom's father is buried and he cried as he made his vows to the bride there. Turned out he'd been cheating on her for months and they divorced a while later. Something so repugnant about marrying someone you're cheating on practically over your father's grave. To date, it's the only wedding I've been to that ended in divorce. I used to work for an event center that hosted a lot of weddings pre-COVID. After one ceremony I saw the groom slap the butt of one of the bridesmaids in the hallway. She laughed and with a big smile said, "Oh Jeremy, you'll never change." My own wedding. We promised none of that immature smash cake and face BS. Well, she went for it. I was taken completely by surprise, dodged, and slapped the cake out of her hand in the manner of someone disarming an attacker. Awkward silence. Edit, for all those that are asking, divorced in 1 year 10 months, well, that is when I left, divorce took a year longer. Just before the wedding started my mother turned to me and said, "You are making the biggest mistake of your life. If we get in the car and leave now I will never say another word." She was right. My grandmother has told every woman in our family that she'd support them backing out of a wedding. Not necessarily because she thinks the relationship won't last, in fact typically she's just saying it as a "hey, just so you know, you can change your mind." She told me that no one supported her when she started having doubts about her first marriage right before the wedding, and she never wants anyone else to feel trapped. But if me or any of my cousins were in a relationship where she felt strongly about it being a mistake, I could totally see her having the car at the curb. A month before the wedding, the couple made an appointment with me, the church music director organist, to plan music for the ceremony. Each made suggestions on music he or she would like. But no matter how many pieces were considered and demonstrated, they couldn't agree on anything, and would get into heated arguments over processionals, recessionals, vocal solos, and prelude music, even though they were all good possibilities. The bride and groom simply seemed indifferent to one another's wishes and needs. In the end, based on what I heard each of them most wanting, I offered compromises in an effort to bring about peace, selections which they finally agreed to. They were engaged, but showed no signs of being in love. Showed up to the wedding of a friend of my husband's who I knew casually. When we arrived at the church the groom was very drunk in the parking lot, and getting drunker by the minute. I thought it was kinda nuts since it was a full Catholic ceremony which involved lots of kneeling and standing. I honestly have no idea how he made it through that, but he did. At the reception, he proceeded to continue the drinking party, while his new wife cried in the washroom. When it was time for the first dance he kind of stumbled around the dance floor despite a year of dance lessons. When it was time for him to take his new wife's garter off and throw it to the bachelors, he instead did a striptease type dance and got himself down to his underwear, in front of many elderly family members. People were shocked and talking, and all in all, it was a shit show. I gave this marriage a year or two tops. They, however, are still married 25+ years later. The bride and groom did the first dance, then spent the rest of their reception completely apart from each other getting shit-faced with their own separate friend groups. The only other dancing all night was the bride dancing with her high school friends, the father-daughter dance, and the mother-son dance, during which the groom was crying. The best man's speech didn't mention the bride at all and basically boiled down to groom, "You're married now but our bond is older and stronger. All of our hunting and fishing trips together are the best thing in our lives, can't wait for more." Such a sad, desperate atmosphere. They made it a little over 1 year. Former wedding DJ here, I've seen some shit. Top 3. 3. Huge brawl on the dance floor between the entire bridal party. Bride knocked her new hubby the fuck out. 2. Groom was going after the garter, blindfolded. Picked the wrong girl, maid of honor. Should have known it wasn't his bride when the garter wasn't there. Had his head up her dress for way too long. 1. Bride disappears right after dinner for about an hour. After she returned, groom's father comes up and asks for the mic. Proceeds to announce to the entire place that his son's new bride was just upstairs stuffing her ex-boyfriend, and that the marriage is over. Crazy times, man. My husband was the best man at a wedding. The bride was a nightmare. Not just during the wedding, but in general everyday life. All of the friends hated her, and she had no friends of her own. We knew it was doomed when, during the portraits, the bride was making everyone miserable as can be. The groom said, exact words, "I'll just send her to therapy. And, if that doesn't work, we can just get divorced."